Yo, what's going on, Vape Nation?
Hey guys, what's up? 7stop here. Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about Bloodborne and why it's overrated. Today I have my friend Samuel here.
Yeah.
He's made some great videos.
Some masterpieces. Alright? The reason why we're definitely making this video is because we think it's overrated. We wouldn't be saying this if people didn't praise it. But no, it has a 92 on the Metascore, which you may think, oh yeah, that's just critics. But no, an 8.9, which is pretty much a 9 on the user score, which I think is completely unfair.
I'd say it's probably like a
7
a
and
higher
half or
7 or an 8, yeah. But
definitely.
It's not as good as people say, and there's a surprising lack of criticism online about the game, even though there's plenty of things to criticize.
Yes, which we'll go over. But
Again, we think it's a good game, but there's so much praise for this game, it's hard to ignore, so we have to make a negative video.
And obviously all the criticism that is there, which is pretty much just like what I've seen on Xbox and stuff, if there's any criticism, it's just, oh, my game won't launch or something like that. It's just
it's all technical stuff. And honestly, the game functioned fine for me.
Yeah, on both of our playthroughs, we played through it 3 times. I played through it once, and then he played through it twice. And every time we didn't really experience any technical issues. It ran really well. Well, for PlayStation.
Well for the PlayStation. Well for console. PC Master Race. Console scrubs. Sam plays Dark Souls 3 on console, and so I don't know if it runs better than Bloodborne.
I would have to say it runs much better than Bloodborne. It runs at like it feels more like 60 than.
And PS4 has superior hardware.
Yeah.
I guess you can say maybe you think Bloodborne has better graphics, but I don't think there's a significant difference.
No, I'd rather play if we're talking purely about how the game runs, I'd definitely rather play Dark Souls 3. In general.
I think the lack of a PC port for Bloodborne or an Xbox port is a huge hindrance.
But the thing is, guess what? You could get the PlayStation streaming
I think
service.
I'd rather shoot myself in the head than get that.
Would.
So anyway, on PC, you can make games run as good as you want. Like I've played Dark Souls 3, well, as long as you have the hardware for it. I've played Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 1 on PC and never had any performance issues. And there's also a huge player base on PC and lots of people who want to play the Dark Souls games. I would say the majority of the like hardcore fan base is on PC.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a huge PC community, so it's a big hindrance to the game to not be on PC. I only got invaded once, and there's already not many invasions, but without being required to pay for multiplayer makes it so there's even less of that stuff.
Oh, but don't worry, they made sure that you had your fair share of human fights, so that's why there's 50,000 NPC fights.
This game has so many unbalanced NPC fights. I'd say the NPCs in this game are harder than all of the bosses except Orphan of Kos.
Except for, a few bosses.
Well, at least depends on the NPC fight, but some of them are definitely harder. Like that stupid one with the 3 guys in Yargul. I hate that one. And the turret guy. Those both, I think they're harder than all the bosses in the game except for Orphan of Kos.
And while it's neat to see like some humans, because most of the time in like the Dark Souls games you don't see some
humans.
That's
by the way, I've played the DLC, so don't tell me it gets better in the DLC. It certainly does get better in the DLC, but it doesn't make it a masterpiece.
No.
If you have to buy something to make the game good, it doesn't make it good.
No, it doesn't make it good. But there's like 3 cases of NPC fights that just made me want to freaking shoot myself. Like I said, there's that one with the turret guy. And the only way you could pretty much win, unless obviously you have tons of experience, is if you knock him off. And then there's like plenty of other... There's that 3-man one in that Yargul. And then on Murgo's area, wherever Murgo is or whatever, there's that one NPC who has the can that sprays stuff that like just... wipes away your health. It's so bad. It's like the programmers just held the backspace key on your health. Yeah, they just were like, and then I said, like, if it's to make up for the multiplayer fights, I'd rather not have that, but if it isn't, they're still bad anyway. So let's move on to the combat. So the combat is the best part of the entire game. Yeah, right? The combat is the best in the series. It's definitely worth noting that, like, I've seen tons of reviews, and the reviews definitely take note of that, which is the main thing I agree with. That's the thing. Yeah, the combat's amazing. It's awesome. The ability, it's really propelled by the ability to regain health upon striking. The rally system. Yeah, rally system. It makes aggressive combat really rewarding, which is good.
But at the same time, this game has a lot less playstyles than the other games, and I really wish they had allowed you to play however you want.
Yeah.
I mean, I never even used the shield in the other games, but sometimes it was fun, and a lot of people enjoy playing with shields.
Yeah, because in Bloodborne, what you have is you have either you parry or you attack normally, which you're going to be doing both. But in Dark Souls 3, I've played Dark Souls 3 about 8 or 9 times, and I've played through on a spell build, on a pyromancy build. I'm about to do a miracle build, but and there's so many like more options, and it's really fun. Instead of it gets tedious using a weapon all the time, so it's really fun to change it up by lobbing fireballs at them or shooting them with soul spears and stuff like that. It's really neat, but Bloodborne just does not offer those options.
Personally, I've never played as a magic build, but there's tons of people who like to play as that, and if you want to play the game through many times, you're gonna really want to have those options, because it'll get boring if you don't have anything to do to mix up your playstyle.
And Bloodborne just simply lacks those options.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the combat. I think the combat's great and really amazing, even though it limits playstyles, it's still excellent. And I think the ability to crush those gems quickly to get health back is a good thing.
Yeah.
However, the way you get the gems is certainly not. I think it should have just been like the other games where you rest at a bonfire or a lamp. You rest at a lamp and you get your healing items back.
Blood gems are called
blood vials, blood whatever.
Okay, I was just saying blood gems are the ones where you blood vials. All right, yeah, let's talk about this is the healing system. All right, so let's
the
talk
healing
about
system. I would consider it a part of the combat, I guess. So it kind of brings the combat down because it's really frustrating when you run out of healing items and you have to go farm. Which happened to me a lot.
Me too.
When I fought Orphan of Kos, especially because I went through a second playthrough and I kind of speedrun the game. Not really, but I went through it quickly. I didn't really fight enemies much. I just ran through to fight the bosses to get to the DLC. And when I got to Orphan of Kos, because the other bosses weren't hard enough really for me to have to use my blood vials a lot, but when I got to Orphan of Kos, it was terrible because I had to use tons of blood vials. And I kept running out and having to farm, and it just was really frustrating. And Orphan of Kos is a good boss, but it's not fun to go have to grind to face him.
And also, as I said, you kind of speed ran through the game, but even me, person who was took their time, because all right, we'll just give some prefix as well. We didn't have PlayStations, we had Xboxes, and we were so hyped for Bloodborne because of how much people loved it. I was so hyped and so excited to play it.
Me too.
But then when I got it, I said I made sure to do everything. I wanted to see everything and stuff like that. So I made sure. But even then, I still ran out of blood vials sometimes. And it was so annoying to have to go farm. It just makes me feel like I don't want to play the game. It's like, all right, well, I have to go farm. I don't want to do that. So you put down the game and you don't want to pick it up. It's just, it makes you, it's very off-putting and stuff. It's not that good. And it's so annoying, especially for boss fights, where as in Dark Souls 3 and just in the Dark Souls series, you had this awesome healing system where you would have to, every time that you were rested at a bonfire, you refilled your Estus, so you could either go forward and try and find a bonfire if it was close, or you could head back and take the safer route and go back through it again, knowing the enemies and stuff. But in Bloodborne, what you have to do is you're like, oh, well, it looks like I have to grind and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just completely...
By the way, we've never played Dark Souls 2, but we've played the other 2 Dark Souls games, and we really like them. One of the best parts about Dark Souls is that it encourages you to keep trying, because each time you die, it's like a reset. Unless you use some of those consumable items, which you don't use that much, you always have another opportunity to try, and you don't lose anything except your souls. But if you can get back to the arena, you can regain your souls. And it was really brilliant because it encouraged people to get better. But having to grind, it just makes you want to quit playing, which isn't fun, and it's not a good game decision. That being said, of course, I think the combat system is quite good at its core. However, of course, there's always a caveat with this game. If you don't have anything interesting to fight, it doesn't matter how good the combat system is, which is our next point, which is enemies. Oh boy. Well, I can admit that the enemy designs and the art and everything, it's excellent. But awesome. How they fight, that's what matters. How fun it is to fight them, how the game plays. And there's so many annoying and frustrating enemies in this game. Personally, I find Frenzy to be the worst of the curse, insta-kill mechanic sort of things, which is in all the games, but it's my least favorite in Bloodborne because it's really common. I also haven't played Demon Souls and Dark Souls 2, as I said, so I don't know if there's more curse in those games or whatever. In Bloodborne, there's so much frenzy and so many enemies that deal it becomes really frustrating.
Yeah, you get really, really nervous because you don't want to have to be sent back to the bonfire, to the lamp. And then this is also where the healing system gets more annoying because you get insta-killed. You get sent back to the lamp. And in Dark Souls 3, you'd be like, okay, well, hey, at least I could run past the enemy because I have the same amount of flasks. Well, you're going to have to farm again if you didn't have any blood vials.
Yeah, if you use blood vials to get past that. And I remember the first time in what's that level with Amygdala? I don't remember the name.
Oh, yeah, it's like the nightmare or something.
Yeah, it's something nightmare. So anyway, the first time I was on that level, I got through that horrific poison swamp and past those giants. That's one thing I can say. I'm glad there's no poison swamp level, but there is a part with poison swamps. And as you're going through it, there's giants throwing rocks at you. So it's really frustrating. But regardless, I finally got through that swamp. And I actually got invaded that time. So I fought someone in the swamp while getting thrown rocks at. And I finally got through it. I used lots of blood vials, but I got through it. I'm like, thank goodness. I turned the corner and I got insta-killed by the freaking whatever Winter Lantern frenzy guy. And it was so annoying.
And as I said, there's tons of enemies that inflict frenzy. But also there's just tons of enemies that have really annoying grab attacks. Like my least favorite is the bloodsucker, where like they send out this little thing from the top of their head and they latch it onto you, and it's just so infuriating because you're gonna have to.
Oh, brain sucker, you mean?
Yeah. And then you guess what? You'll lose health, which means okay, I gotta heal, but then there you go.
You use your blood vials. Time to farm, and then you also lost your whatever those things are, insight. You lost insight to that stupid thing.
Dude, oh my fucking, do my fucking controller, nigga. Fuck, hop off my fucking dick. And I'm fucking dead. I just lost. Fuck. Fucking 13 insight loss. Oh my fucking god, yo. And then I fucking die on top of that, so I gotta kill all these niggas again.
How's life?
Dude, this fucking game is stupid, yo.
And it's so annoying.
There's that insight as well. That's so annoying. But anyway, like there's so many there's that bloodsucker one. There's the other ones that just like grab you, and there's also tons of annoying stun lock. Enemies that where if you don't perfectly dodge it, you're gonna be stunned or you're gonna be stuck. Especially for those NPC fights. But anyway, there are just so many, and there's so many enemies that have really, really weird health like amounts. Like sometimes you'll be in an area where it's like, oh yeah, the average enemy takes like 7 hits to kill, but then you'll find like 5 or 6 enemies that take 20,000 hits to kill. For example, in Canehurst Castle, there are those like weird bugs with like the blood thing here. Pull the blood bellies or something like that.
Blood licker. They're called blood lickers.
They took so much
The blood lickers
time.
have so much health. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
And those stupid maggots, you'd think that like they're so tiny they would be really weak, but they actually have tons of health and are incredibly annoying.
And they're hard to hit too. Yeah. And like looking through this list of enemies, all the enemies are also really the same. Like you have the huntsman. Okay, he swings his weapon. All right.
Yeah. Other than the frenzy inflicting enemies, they all really behave very similar.
They swing their weapon, or they most of the time they swing their weapon at you and you dodge, or they launch at you because they're a beast or something like that. And there's also in the forest section, I forget what it's called.
Forbidden Woods?
Yeah, Forbidden Woods, something like that. There are these awful snake enemies that like inflict poison, and you try and hit them, and you try and hit them, but they keep on like launching at you, pushing you away. Yeah. And then when you try and hit them as well, they have so much health. Like they have it's so annoying.
The giant snake balls, pit of vipers, I believe it's called.
Yeah, there's so many
annoying.
There's so many annoying ones. All right, I said we're just going through here, and there's like
we're looking at a list of the enemies, and it's not impressive.
No, there's just tons of really, really, really annoying.
Oh, the dogs in this game.
Oh, the dogs are so annoying.
I don't know if they're worse than the other games. Do you think they're worse than Dark Souls 3?
I think they're not as worse as they're not as bad as Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, but they're still annoying.
And yeah, I said we're just scrolling through. We see tons of enemies that like they swipe at you. The Snatchers. The Snatchers are the ones that they take you to Yargul, which we'll get to the areas later.
Which I thought that was pretty neat how they took you to Yargul.
Yes, that's a neat
But
thing.
they do tons of damage and they're really hard to kill and annoying, especially in the early game.
Because they have so much health.
Why'd that open?
Why did that open? Why? Yeah, exactly. That's what the enemies in Bloodborne make me want to do. All right,
I'll put that in the video. I don't know why it cut to that,
but whatever.
But it's like on my computer. We were looking at our notes, and there's a clip. For some reason, there's a clip of me sticking a gun in my mouth and feigning suicide.
It'll be on the screen.
Yeah.
But it just looks so annoying.
Oh, it was. I think it's just in the same folder, and I must have accidentally clicked.
Whatever. Go back to the enemies. We need just so many annoying like swiping enemies, and then there's like
the Loran Silver Beasts at Mikolash's Nightmare, or whatever that place is called. They're so infuriating because they've got these worms. I can't remember if they all have that. But
giant viper pit.
Oh. I like how they listed the Shadows of Yharnam as a regular enemy.
Yes, because they appear later on.
Yeah, they appear later on.
But anyway, there's just so many just really, swipey enemies or enemies where you dodge and then you hit them. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Dark Souls 3, there's the
oh boy, the small celestial emissary.
The blue goobers are the dragon enemies in that one area. I'm blanking on the name, but the area with the nameless king, there are those dragon enemies. Even though they're annoying, they're at least unique. Mm-hmm. Whereas the enemies in this game,
the ones that put down fire on the pathway and stuff.
Yeah, those guys, and they're at least unique. Whereas in Bloodborne, they're just kind of different. They're just kind of skinned differently, or they have different sizes and different looks. But other than that,
flailing beast enemies aren't fun to fight. Stop putting them in the game. They're everywhere. Anyway, that brings us to the bosses, because there's a lot of flailing beast enemies.
So you would think at least, okay, the enemies aren't that good. Well, at least the bosses are fun, right? Wrong!
There's certainly some good bosses. I really like the bosses, Lady Maria and... I really like Lady Maria and Orphan of Kos. They're some of the best in the series, in my opinion.
They're really good.
But also Blood-Starved Beast, Gehrman, and Martyr Ligarius.
Martyr Ligarius is the best in the base game.
Mm-hmm,
he's
my
really
opinion.
awesome. Yeah, in my opinion as well. But he's really, really fun and neat. But other than that...
Sam keeps backing away from the microphone.
Sorry, but
so if he's really quiet, that's why.
But other than that, that's it. That's pretty much it. There's Blood-Starved Beast, Gehrman, Martyr Ligarius, Lady Maria, and Orphan of Kos. That's like 5 or 6 just good bosses.
And that includes I'd say the game has 5 good bosses with the DLC. And these numbers are including the DLC. We think it has 10 bad bosses. One Reborn. Oh,
the worst boss in the series.
That's my least favorite boss. And maybe in gaming as a whole.
Yeah, in gaming as a whole, that's probably one of the worst bosses. Rom. Rom's really bad. He just shoots these crystals at you. A boss where you fight the enemies and regular enemies in the arena is not fun. For example, the Run Reborn, you have to kill these maidens before you have to fight the boss, or you're distracted from the boss.
And the boss can turn the ground into acid, and you have to run away and hide, and then you constantly get shot at. I mean, it's not that hard. It's just frustrating.
And then there's just tons of bosses, as I said, that make you divert away from the enemy. Like Rom, you have to kill all the little spiders first before you get to Rom. And it's the reason
that's something that's almost gone in Dark Souls 3.
Yeah. But the reason why we're criticizing the bosses so hard is because so many people say that Bloodborne has the best bosses in the series. Like, so many people say, oh yeah, Bloodborne has probably best quality bosses in the series.
To me, it's almost indisputably Dark Souls 3. But I don't know about Sekiro. I haven't played it.
Sekiro is probably about as good as Dark Souls 3. I've played Sekiro. I've played through it many times, and it's about as good as Dark Souls 3 because it has tons of really awesome sword fighting bosses, but not in Bloodborne. Bloodborne has, probably, honestly, some of the worst, in my opinion, it's the worst bosses in the series. It has the worst bosses of the series. Because, Dark Souls 3...
On average, because there's really good bosses, but there's lots of mediocre or average bosses.
So, Dark Souls 3, we have...
For example, average bosses are Cleric Beast, Father Gascoigne, Vicar Amelia, those sort of enemies.
Yeah. All right, then we'll look at Dark Souls 3.
Oh, Dark Beast Parl. That's hardly a fight. It's so easy.
No, you just hit his legs and he falls over. But then let's move over to Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 has 16 good bosses, which is amazing.
In our opinion.
Yeah, in our opinion, obviously. This is entirely our opinion, so don't get mad at us.
Yeah.
We're not. This is a disputable fact.
Bosses like Sister Freed, Gale,
Oh, I
and
love those
the
bosses.
Abyss Watchers. Those are some awesome bosses. The Soul of Cinder. It
Soul
has
of Cinder.
amazing boss quality.
Yeah, it has some, like, really
Dark Eater,
awesome.
Midir,
Dark Eater, Midir, Nameless King,
Demon Princes.
Demon Princes, Twin Princes, Lorien and Lothar.
Oh yeah, amazing fight as well.
Mm-hmm. And then even Champion Gundyr, really awesome. Even someone like
Dragon Slayer armor too.
Oh yeah, Dragon Slayer armor is really neat. And even someone like Vort, who I personally think is really easy now, he was still a really awesome, good introductory boss. And same with like, let's just compare. So there's the one Reborn.
Same with Edex Gundyr as well. He's an amazing opening boss.
All right, so there's Gundyr in Dark Souls 3. All right, so he starts off as this like this mammoth just knight, and he just looks, and he's just kind of big, and then he turns into this awesome like monster with this awesome hand. Whereas like let's talk about the Cleric Beast. He's pretty much the introductory boss because he's the first boss that you pretty much face. What he does is he hits you with his hands and swipe attacks and slam attacks. That's all Bloodborne has in its bosses: swipe attacks and slam attacks.
Yeah, and a lot of people said that Gascoigne was really hard or something, but honestly, I thought he was super easy. Of course, I had prior Souls experience. If this was your first Souls game, you might have gotten wrecked. Like, I got wrecked when I faced Edex Gundyr in Dark Souls 3, which was my first Souls game. But I still think he's a great introductory fight to get you used to the game and everything. And what's the one in Dark Souls 1, the first boss? It's super, super easy. Asylum Demon. He's not as good, in my opinion, for introducing newcomers to the game. He's so easy. I don't know how anyone could lose to him. I mean, unless they're just really new to games or something.
Yeah, but even then, you probably won't be playing Dark Souls as your first game.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on to Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 has lots of average bosses.
Yeah, in my opinion, it has lots of average bosses.
But in the DLC, all the bosses are good. We have what's his name?
Sanctuary Guardian.
Great.
Artorias the Abyss Walker. Amazing. Black Dragon Calamate. Super
really
fun.
Good, awesome dragon fight. And Manus.
And then Manus.
Fun
another
challenge.
Fun and one, probably the hardest boss in the game.
Yeah, who's really fun as well.
Because I found Dark Souls 1 to be pretty easy, honestly, compared to some of the other bosses and games and stuff.
And then the Four Kings.
Oh, Four Kings. Yeah, really good boss. Gwyn's a pretty good boss, but if you parry, he's a joke.
Yeah. Then there are still some alright bosses. Like there are some, the Taurus Demon, he's kind of neat. And some more like that. But then there's only pretty much 6 ones that I really, like, kind of despise.
And then, like, Pinwheel, not a good boss.
Not a good boss. Not even a boss.
Yeah. Basically, it's easier than a regular enemy. It's funny because the area that comes after him, I don't know, I'll just call it skeleton destruction. In the dark, you can't see anything. The skeletons in that area are harder than Pinwheel, and Pinwheel's a boss.
And then,
Gravelord Nito, he's all right. He would have been pretty good if it wasn't for all the skeletons in his arena. That kind of ruined it.
But what we're doing here is we're comparing him to Bloodborne, and Bloodborne just has like the obvious worst bosses in the series, like the Witches of Hemwick, gimmick boss, Celestial Emissary, gimmick boss. And then there's
the Living Failures, one of the worst bosses I've ever fought.
Then there's the
Lawrence the First Vicar in the DLC.
Really bad. And there's so many gank bosses. That's what I also really dislike.
Murgo's Wet Nurse. Oh, and the One Reborn.
There's so many just gimmick bosses. And
Mikolash, Host of Nightmares.
When he has 2 freaking attacks. But yeah, there's so many just like gank fights. Like there's the one who, the Rom, who has those mini spiders, the Shadows of Yharnam, where there's 3 of them, the Witches of Hemwick, which has regular enemies, and there's so many with regular enemies in them. Whereas with Dark Souls 3, there are some stinkers like the Deacons of the Deep,
and the
Crystal Sage.
Yeah,
but other than that, there's the Abyss Watchers, where each one of them is a boss, and they don't appear later, which makes them.
And the Ancient Wyvern is a big stinker in Dark Souls 3.
Ancient Wyvern, but I feel like the Ancient Wyvern would be in Bloodborne.
Yeah, it's a huge gimmick fight. And something like the Curse-Rided Greatwood, one of the worst bosses in Dark Souls 3, again, that feels like a Bloodborne boss because it has that gimmick, like slice its nutsack open sort of thing.
All right, so now we'll talk about some of the Sekiro bosses. So Sekiro, in my opinion, has only about one boss that could be considered bad, but I still consider them mediocre. So we have Gyobu Masataka Oniwa. He is really cool. He's on a horse and stuff like that. He's awesome. Lady Butterfly, pretty good fight. Genichiro Ashina, really awesome fight. Fully Tree Monkey's not that good. Guardian Ape, really fun. Headless Ape, really cool. Ishin Ashina, really awesome. Great Shinobi Owl, really cool. True Corrupted Monk, like awesome arena. Divine Dragon, awesome spectacle. Owl Father, best boss in the game. Ishin the Sword Saint, really cool. Demon of Hatred, really, really, really awesome. And then we go over to the mini bosses, because the mini bosses are also really good as well. We have the Lone Shadow Swordsman. We have Shingeki of the Red Guard. We have some Sakura Bull of the Palace. Seven Spears Ashina. We have some really, really awesome mini bosses and regular bosses that each change it up in some way. And Bloodborne just doesn't really have that.
Sam didn't play the Chalice Dungeons, but I did. I didn't play them a whole lot, but probably spent a few hours in them. And they're not that great, really. I guess if you really love Bloodborne and you want to get more of it, it's great. But otherwise, it's just a bunch of repeat corridors and copy and paste stuff. And just killing loads of enemies to grind and level up and stuff. And not fun. I wish you could just fight the Chalice Dungeon bosses, because I love fighting bosses. That's my favorite part of Souls. As you can tell, we focused a lot on bosses here. But I don't want to play through like an hour in a Chalice Dungeon to get to the boss. It's not fun.
Yeah, and it's also, again, I hear they're really grindy in order to get certain materials stuff.
In order to get more Chalice Dungeons, you just have to play the same ones over and over and get the materials to create new Chalice Dungeons, and it's just not fun. Grinding. So I stopped doing it because I didn't want to grind anymore. I don't find grinding fun. There's some people that find that fun, but I certainly don't.
Now we'll talk about customization areas, but first we'll go ahead and talk about customization. So customization, what you have are a black trench coat, a black coat, a black coat, a black sweater, and a black coat. You have just tons of black caps, robes, and just random, really just bland, boring, gray, dull customization options. And another big thing that Dark Souls had was weight. So in Bloodborne, they pretty much removed weight. You could wear whatever arm you want, and you could have whatever weapon you want, which I think is nice to a certain degree. But in Dark Souls, you had this awesome, you could look really cool with the different armors, because there are some really awesome armors, but you could look really cool, but you had to decide whether or not to have some awesome looking armor and a good sword, or if you wanted to. There's a huge trade-off with the armor and the weapons.
It created an interesting dynamic with playstyles and your loadout and all that stuff, because you had to consider how much things weighed. But Bloodborne gets rid of that trade-off, and at first it was nice, but after a while, you kind of crave that ability to customize and make interesting trade-offs with your loadout.
If you have unlimited freedom, then there's no point in playing the game.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, if you'll beat every single boss in one hit, what's the point in playing the bosses? If you could customize your character to your... customize your character to the point where you can have anything you want, everything you want. If you could have all the max armor stats or all the max armor, why should you even have...
It's basically only there to look cool. And there's no...
They don't even...
Because usually... some of them do, but...
Yeah.
Usually in Souls, one armor will provide you more protection, and so you have to decide, is it worth the weight? Is it worth weighing more and rolling more sloppily or whatever in order to have this better protection? But in Bloodborne, there's no trade-off, so you'll always just choose the one with better protection. Or whatever boss you're going into, you'll choose the one that has protection to that element.
Yeah, there's no
reason not to choose.
There's no reason to not choose that. Mm-hmm. And as I said, there's some cool ones, but it's just gray trench coats, black trench coats, stuff like that. Which I do have to say, it is really neat when you when you're killing enemies and the blood starts to cover you. That's really neat. But other than that, that's another just aesthetic thing. But the customization just is very lacking, and that also is kind of like the weapons. But bland customization also leads to the bland areas.
Yeah, I'll say the level design is quite good.
Yes,
a lot of the areas have excellent interconnecting design, but the areas visually don't look interesting at all. Although that doesn't mean all of the areas are well designed, but most of them are and quite good. But the areas look horrible and uninteresting.
Yes.
After you've seen one gray city, you don't want to see that for the rest of the game. It's like the whole game just wants to be gray or black and brown, and it's not fun to look at.
No, like so we have how I like to describe it is that like there's pretty much 3 or 4 different areas, but there are like 16 or 20 areas that have names. So like there may be there's a city like Central Yarnum, but they have like 15,000 areas in like around Central Yarnum, but they look like Central Yarnum. So I find it hard to remember the names of certain places. Like, what's the difference between the Healing Church Workshop and Central Yarnum? One of them, it goes upwards. Okay, how do they look different? They don't. They just look gray, brown, pink, and so boring.
Yeah, it's really uninteresting to look at. And even the areas which are vastly different than the city gray areas like the forest still look boring because all the colors are muted and washed out. It's like freaking MW3 or something.
Yeah, it's MW3 or like, as I like to, it's like spaghetti that's been sitting in the water too long. It's just so like bland and washed out. Oh yeah, that's another thing. If you showed me a photo, if you showed me a photo of Central Yarnum and then you showed me a photo of Yargul, I'll probably be like, oh yeah, maybe that's Central Yarnum, maybe that's Yargul. But like, I would, if you just showed me and I didn't play the game, because once you play through the game, you know the layout. But if you showed me and I did play the game, I'd be like, it's the same area. Like, there's no difference to the design.
Byrgenwerth.
So small.
It's so small. And then you have that BS hunter fight before you get to the
another
boss.
one.
Yeah.
That's the real, as it's been kind of mean.
That's the real boss, yeah.
Yeah, but then there's, the Forbidden Wood's different, but still, it's literally just an area with some buildings. That's the Bloodborne areas. An area with, like, a building or two or a shack or two that's wooden, brown, gray, made of stone or something like that. There's the, also near the Forbidden Woods, the Hemwick Charnel Lane, which is where you fight the boss witches of Hemwick, which are not even a boss. But anyway, you go through an area that's pretty much Central Yarnum, but without as many houses. You just walk through this area there's just gray dirt and gray just buildings and brown walls, and you go and you fight these the witches of Hemwick in this small tiny room.
And you fight regular enemies.
Yes, in the Witches of Hemwick boss fight. And then we had the Canehurst Castle, which looked a little different.
It looked different. It was still a gray castle. It just was covered in snow, which made it a little bit more interesting. And it had the blood lickers.
Yay! What else do we have?
We've got the lecture building. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. I remember that area. They'll be talking about this one for ages. I'll be like, holy cow. So, you know, like in Dark Souls 3, where you go fight Gale, it just zooms out and it shows this awesome, like, wasteland, and you're like, what the heck happened? So, I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about the
lecture building.
The lecture building, okay? That's the most important. To the Dark Souls.
Wait. We got to talk about the DLC, guys. Got to talk about the DLC.
So the first part
is... The Hunter's Nightmare. It looks way different than the rest of the game.
But at the same time...
But it's still kind of washed out.
And it's still the inverse of Yarnum, which I already traveled through.
Yeah, and I traveled through 100 levels just like it. And then we've got the research hall. I don't know what that is.
That's the part with the living failures, and you have to turn the thingy in the middle.
Oh yeah, that's right. I actually really like that level in terms of design.
Yeah.
But in terms of visuals, not great. The fishing hamlet, that level looks awesome. I think that's a really cool level. I love how the level changes as you get closer to the Orphan of Kos, and there's all those guys right before him. That's a great level in terms of visual and design.
And it leads to a good boss. So that's something.
Except for those massive fish guys that just totally... They just penetrate you in a second.
Oh my gosh.
Like the giant guy that comes out of the corner, and there's 600 other ones.
Then there's
this
other section where in order to get Maria's, like, Rakuya, you have to fight these 2 giant fish guys. I don't know if you know about it, but you have to fight these 2 giant fish guys. That's so annoying. It's not fun. That's the biggest reason to, like, Bloodborne areas suck. It's like if there's nothing interesting to look at, why should I be playing them?
From what I've seen, that sort of stuff, like with all the enemies in Fishing Hamlet, it's like they dumped all the enemies. It's sort of like Dark Souls 2 from what I've seen. They just dump all these huge enemies around with no regard for balance.
What you do in Bloodborne is you go from building 1 to building 2. Yeah. But in
and
Dark
they're both
Souls
made of
3,
gray stone.
But in Dark Souls 3, you go from the Cemetery of Ash, like this Crazy broke it down like there's just tubes of stuff to the Firelink Shrine, but then you teleport to Lothric, this awesome, grand, huge city castle, which may look, it's a great castle, but the thing is there's yellows, there's different hues.
There's lots of colors.
And then there's the Undead Settlement, which is more like a Bloodborne area, but they are allowed to off-put it by putting next like the Road of Sacrifices, like which is kind of green in a foresty area.
Although I hate the Road of Sacrifices.
No, I don't like Fahrenkeep.
I hate Road of Sacrifices too because it has those stupid flying enemies.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then there's Fahrenkeep. Fahrenkeep's a really lame looking and playing area,
but
it's a freaking acid swamp.
Yes, but I'd rather do that than like land area number 5. But anyway, then we go to the Catacombs of Karthus, which is like these catacombs red, and then you go to the Smoldering Lake, which is like this red and huge trees, and then as you enter out of that, you go to the Irithyll of the Boreal Valley, this awesome, cool blue area, and then it leads to the dungeon, which looks more kind of reddish, more bluish. Then you get to the Profane Capital.
Then you go to the Profane Capital,
which is
this
awesome,
huge fallen city with blue, and it's interesting.
In a cave, and then you go up to Anor Londo, a previous area from the other games, which doesn't look as good. But then you have, I mean, it doesn't look as good as it used to in Dark Souls 1. But then you head to Lothric Castle, which is this actual castle area in Lothric, which as I said,
and it's got red and interesting and tons of interesting colors
also
and stuff.
The thing is with the Bloodborne enemies don't off-put the areas. They just
look very similar to the area.
With Lothric Castle, you have the Red Knights, you have the Hollows, and then you go to the Consumed King's Garden, which leads to the Untended Graves, this awesome black inverted area, kind of like the Upside Down.
And then there's the Archdragon Peak, which is this really cool white area situated on the top of the mountain.
And then you go to the Kiln of the First... that's pretty much the Dreg Heap and the Kiln of the First Flame. They're interchangeable. This awesome, even though it's gray, it still
and they've
has,
got the ash
awesome
clouds, and it changes everything.
And then there's the Ring City.
The Ring City is probably the most interesting and colorful level in the game.
It's the huge, sprawling, cool... yellow castle area.
And don't get us started on Dark Souls 1. Dark Souls 1 has even more color and even more interesting and well-designed levels than Dark Souls 3.
You have Anor Londo. You have, in my personal opinion, Blighttown, which is actually really
I actually like Blighttown as well. And it looks really interesting.
I love the cemetery, not the cemetery lake, which is also another thing about Dark Souls 3 has an advantage in this, but like the Smoldering Lake in Dark Souls 3, if you look at it, it looks very much like the one lake in Dark Souls 1. Mm-hmm. So that's like really awesome, and it you can just see how it's changed and stuff. Like Undead Burg has awesome level design.
Oh yeah, and it's got really cool colors. It's got that green vines on a castle. Oh, and the depths. Even the depths are interesting.
Ash Lake, I love Ash Lake. Ash Lake's awesome. Mm-hmm. Then we have Sen's Fortress, a castle, but there's all these cool booby traps.
Yeah.
And then there's
the Great Hollow. It's so interesting. You're going through a tree, and then you come out at Ash Lake, as we said, which looks beautiful. Then
there's Anor Londo, this huge sprawling city that kind of looks like the Ring City. Then you have Darkroot Garden and Darkroot Basin, this green, shrouded, misty forest.
And Sen's Fortress has a yellow hue and those snake enemies that fit well.
And the New Londo Ruins, this city, the Duke's Archives, which has all this knowledge, and then the Crystal Caves, which has invisible bridges.
Duke's Archives has lots of colors and stuff.
Then we have, even though Demon Ruins and Lost Izalith aren't that good, they at least bring different colors. Mm-hmm. Then we have
they look different than everything else that's come before.
And then there's the Kiln of the First Flame, which just looks awesome. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Sanctuary.
Don't forget Tomb of the Giants.
Tomb of the Giants.
It's so dark you can't even see what it looks like.
You have to have a lamp. The Valley of the Drakes and stuff. But as you said.
By the way, I played Tomb of the Giants without a lamp, and it was so bad. I hated it.
But anyway, those areas are 10,000 times better than Bloodborne. Like Dark Souls 3 has those awesome moments where I said in Bloodborne you go to building A to building C, which leads to this other area. But in Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 1, you're going from trees and underground settlements with hues of red to these awesome sprawling huge cities with different hues of yellow and red, where's Bloodborne? Again, I said building B and C.
Ultimately, we do think Bloodborne's a good game. But you probably think we freaking hate this game because we've complained about it for like an hour. At least that's how long it took to record this. It'll be cut down a lot. But anyway, you probably think we hate this game. But honestly, we like it. It's fun and enjoyable. And we'd rather play it than most of the trash coming out today.
2020, Rage 2, Modern Warfare, 2019.
Yeah. NFL, it's the same game every year.
Madden and all that stuff. Like, we'd rather play it than those. And even though those games are like trash... We just think we're comparing it to the other games made by From Software. All right, From Software.
There's a huge quality standard there that I don't think Bloodborne reached compared to the other games.
No, it's in our opinion, it's the weakest, but it's still good. All right, we still have to emphasize that we still had fun.
Yeah, I'd rather play it than the horde of mediocre shooters and open world games that come out every year.
Yeah.
Oh boy, another Assassin's Creed game.
We'd rather play it than that, but we still think that compared to how much credit is given to this game, like we have people over here saying that they can't find any criticism. Like, really? You can't find any criticism with this game?
There's literally Reddit posts like that.
They're like, I
can't find a single bad thing.
Criticism. Oh yeah? How about trudging through the bland areas one more time, huh?
How about Frenzy? How about the Winter Lantern killing you?
It's just kind of. I think a main reason why also we're kind of this angry is just we're just so disappointed that how much hype the people generated. Like, sometimes you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't get as hyped for this. But there are people out there saying that you should get really hyped for this.
And everyone, we're huge Souls fans. We love Dark Souls 1 and 3. And we heard that Bloodborne is the best one. Everyone says, oh my gosh, best game in the series. So we were so excited to play it, but it's massively disappointing compared to those expectations.
Compared to those expectations set by so many people, who say that it has
online,
the best
there's such
boss.
a lack of criticism.
Yeah, who say there's the best bosses. Some people say it has like the best boss quality, but no, in my opinion, Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro have the best boss qualities. But that's just so much better than Bloodborne's awful level, like not design, but just looking. It's inferior. The combat is, while excellent, has horrible health systems.
Yeah.
And awful grinding. I hate the tedium.
But I'd love to see that combat with some better enemies and bosses.
Yes, like if it was pretty much. Now I'm obviously saying this like Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne are different games, but if Bloodborne combat was fused with the like amount of good bosses with Dark Souls 3 and the areas in Dark Souls, it would be the best game in the franchise. But that's just not what we got with Bloodborne.
Yeah. Anyway, just skip to the end of the video. Don't listen to anything we said. Leave a rage comment. Leave a dislike. Post the video on Reddit so we can get tons of hate. Bye, guys. And with 7 Stop signing out.
Bye.